Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 2 of Chrysalis Satori, All American Burnouts. Today, we're going to go. We figured after the first episode, we have to give you a little backstory as to who we are and to why we're doing this channel. So the backstory is very important, though. We have to show our history to show where we've been to know where we're going. So today, we are going to talk about us a little bit, so you get to know us better, get to trust us a little more, maybe. But and there's another thing too. We wear these sunglasses because we're very bad at focusing on the camera.
All right.
So I have to look around. Wes looks around. So yeah, while we're instead of doing this back and forth, we're gonna we just wear sunglasses so we can look around and do whatever, and people still think we're looking at the camera.
Honestly, my second video. I'm a total novice. So.
It's for me because I kind of do the operations behind this stuff because there's a lot of
yes, he does.
Things. So I have to kind of look everywhere to make sure everything is going right. So instead of driving people crazy with my crazy eyes, I'm just going to wear sunglasses to cover them up. But so let's talk a little bit about us, my friend. I mean, why don't you start and tell us your life story in 10 minutes or less, and let's see if I can do the same after that.
I hope I can do the 10-minute mark. And for more, so all of this, in my opinion, is for context, so that everything we speak about later you have some idea of where we're coming from when we say these things, rather than having to revisit or rehash it later. And both of us, living abroad, are very accustomed to this. Unfortunately, this is what it's like to go to an expat meetup, is to give your life story very quickly, because everything you say without it just leads to more questions, and you're just going back in time to give relevancy to what you're saying.
And you end up
to a point where we were joking about it. Like we said, we should just wear QR codes on our chest that just goes to a blog page that, here, read this, don't ask me.
Yeah.
So
that's true, because you end up asking the same questions or answering the same questions over and over again.
Every single one, which is why we don't go anymore. But yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm just going to do this. I'll try to ramble through it quickly and chronologically. So grew up south west corner of Virginia. That's Martinsville, Virginia. So a very rural life. Country, literally the area I grew up in, and my family is still there. My parents are still there. It's called horse pasture, if that gives you an idea. Did grow on a bit of a farm. Horses, chickens, we grew our own stuff. So did other people, and they share what they raise and so on. I was an accident. I was unplanned. My mother and father both been previously married. Both of their spouses has died. They met. My father had my brother and sister by his first wife, and but again, both spouses died differently, of course, at different times, at different places. My parents met up. My mother was under the impression, because this is back in time when, medicine was exactly science, everything was the woman's fault. So if you couldn't have kids, it was obviously her. So she was under the impression she could not have children. She tried to very much with her first husband, and that didn't happen. So they were both under that impression, and then they had me suddenly. So my brother and sister are 13 and 15 years older than me. So big age gap. So growing up rural, and with that age gap, grew up very isolated, if you will. Not the worst thing in the world, just giving context here. So grew up there, wasn't really a college strong era or place where I grew up, very religious. Try to fast forward. So, high school, yada, yada. So I'd have no formal education certificates of any type. Did community college for a bit, working third shift at a factory. I've worked in just about every industry, not every, but just I haven't worked in healthcare, but retail, manufacturing, labor, whatever, right? Selling knockoff perfumes and jewelry out of the trunk of my car, all that kind of happy stuff. Didn't finish that associate's because I needed money more than I could complete the schooling. Less than a full year at DeVry in Atlanta, Georgia. That was the big city for me. That was my first big city. Um, didn't finish that either. They were teaching COBOL when C was coming out. I just, again, I could make more money doing my own thing, so dropped that. Mom and pop computer shops, small networks, that stuff. Building computers, loved that. Got to say, I love hardware, love building, repairing hardware. Had my first corporate job. I was around, I think, 25, something like that. That was out of Greensboro, North Carolina. So still in the South. Was with him a couple of years. I grew up with my father. He owned his own appliance and repair delivery business. So I grew up very customer service centric, being a business owner, being able to make decisions, and not just some overall policy, so you could charge differently depending on a person's circumstances, and you could really take care of people, fix people's problems, help out those in less in need, and that sort of thing. So I grew up in that environment about doing the right thing. I did not like the culture in which I had my first corporate job, so hence I was only there a couple of years. A couple other people that I worked with in that amount of time also left, and we we LLC'd shortly after I left, and we had our own consulting gig for a stretch there. I had my own business. That was very nice. That's when I finally began. That was the first flight I'd ever taken. I think I was about 26. Started traveling the U.S., doing implementation jobs for payroll and timekeeping related systems. Began to get a lot of exposure finally, right? Seeing the U.S., because the U.S., even though everyone over here thinks everyone outside the U.S. thinks all of the U.S. is the same. And of course, it's not. It's vastly different culture, ethnicity, just everything, religion, how religious, food, how they drive, the works, right? What they do for enjoyment, all these things very different. I traveled like that a bit for a good stretch. Got my first house. Got married the first time for it. Okay, so I got married for the first time. Yeah, that was about a 5-year stretch. Anyway, got married for the wrong reason.
That
So
applies for
obviously,
multiple times.
oh, that's such a story. So yeah, let's not. Hey, I married young and stupid, and I went in with the idea I could always get divorced. So obviously, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Um, uh, got out of that. Had 2 homes during that stretch. Uh, Left as part of that relationship. I quit my independent company so I could be home more, so I wasn't traveling all the time. So I was with the world's largest payroll provider. I started working for them directly, even though most of my contract work had come from them previously as well. But worked for them. Never intended to. It just kind of happened. Complacency and comfort largely a factor in this. Every few years I was thinking I needed to leave, go back to being independent, doing my own thing, but I didn't. I ended up being there 20 years. Various roles, as you can imagine, that amount of time. Different roles, different levels, very broad, with a technical background, but not IT. I was always on the business side, not the IT side, but I could do and speak both languages, so that's what made me valuable in that. So business analyst was probably surmises a lot of my work, my overall function there. Solutions architect before that was even a thing, a term. And also because of my work, I could do, before there was ever a term for that, remote work. This allowed me the ability to move around a lot through my years. Another thing that most Americans just don't have the luxury for. So I've moved considerably, even within the U.S. before getting out of the U.S. Lived again in half the states at some point. PC Anywhere dial-up. Just from
Yeah,
that long ago, right?
I remember that.
Yeah, before any of these things were a thing, right? So I was with them. 21 of the homes was in North Carolina. One was in Florida. After the divorce, I took a very different lifestyle for a while there, a few years there, of, as most people say, after, some people usually go to some extreme after a divorce. And so I had my few years there of craziness. As you can hear, I worked all my 20s. I didn't have, so Whereas most people live their years in their 20s and then they hunker down for the rest of their life. I am what a very intelligent friend of mine refers to me as a case of Benjamin Buttons. I live life in the reverse. I was very serious. I was in suit and ties, up until my mid 30s. I worked. It was a
Yeah.
focus on work. It was a focus on not ever having to, and not that there was anything wrong, but having to go back. The difference, having the option of and the flexibility and the means to do things. So I had a real focus on that those years. So I didn't live as most people did. So I would say I lived my 20s in my mid to late 30s.
Hmm.
Got married a second time, very briefly, and that wasn't a marriage either. That was to someone from another country. And honestly, that was we got married for the paper. We got married so that we could date because we had been dating abroad. Her visiting me in America, I go visit her for a couple of months in her country
Hmm.
for over the course of 10 months. And it just got to the point of where, okay, we either have to stop this or we have to take it to another level. We examine different, visa and is it easier for me to be there? And I determined quickly. And that was back then. I was a very different person in terms of the world back then and worldview. I found it easier for her to come to me than me to go to her. So
Yeah.
we got married just so we could date for a couple of years. So, and that's all it turned out to be. It was a couple of years. What we had in common in spades, but we didn't have anything else in common. So I just did the paperwork again and moved on. I somewhere between all that, I had visited another relationship, but visited and fallen in love with Vegas, and I'm not a gambler at all. But it provided all this stimulus that I liked. I'm very much a foodie. So just some of the best dining. I didn't live on the strip or spend my time on the strip. I love the climate and the environment. I like the dry. I can handle hiking at 2 p.m. and 120-degree heat, no problem. I like that. Give me, Florida or this climate, just 80 degrees at 100% humidity, and I'm dying. I just want to stay indoors with an air conditioner.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so uh, so ended up spending before the burnout, well, during when it occurred, I was in Vegas at the time. Had been there, I think, going on maybe around 8 years. Just I've got to say, of all the places I lived in the States, Vegas suited me the best. I was in Henderson at first, in Seven Hills, and then I was up in Summerlin, and enjoyed that very much. The best dining is not on the strip; it's off strip. It has a lot to offer if that's what you like, that's what you're looking for. The outdoors and the climate just suited me incredibly well. I had never had a single allergy or problem, or the climate suited me so well, whereas the East Coast is just too tropical for me. Um, the burnout happened there. I was going on my 20th year with this same company. Uh, I got to the point where I was drinking myself to death. Luckily, I didn't have any issues, or I was aware of this. I've always been a person that was very, since high school, 10th grade, wrestling, very aware of nutrition, supplements, eating habits, working out. I was very conscious and regimented. It's too strong a word, but just very conscious of these things, and pretty much an overall healthy person that way. And so I was just very aware of just how much I was always a bit of a drinker, but again, I was never sloppy. That's just that what everyone would warn me on is that I can handle
Hmm.
it so well you wouldn't know it. And meanwhile, your liver is just shriveling, right? So, yeah, on the outside, it's great, uh, but I realized I was on that, and that's right about the time cannabis was becoming legal, and I had never done anything in those terms. Like, what am I doing? It's legal. Why don't So I went and talked to a Budristo, told them what was happening with me, the lack of sleep, where I was, and things, and they suggested some edibles to start out with, and that got me off the booze. So I did that for a stretch, and that I was pretty cannabis heavy for, let's say, 3 years. Never really didn't smoke. I vaped, some edibles. This was part of my journey, though. This enabled me because I was very much a right brain analyst, overthinker. It enabled me to connect with my So I treat it as medicine, though, by the way. I mean, I want to say that too. This was not a cure, and I don't want to upset anybody out there. I have people in my life, family even, that, to this day are very heavy cannabis users, but I treated it as medicine. And
Mm.
medicine is not something you should ever be on perpetually. This should be a temporary treatment. This should get you through something until you can, again, like we talked in a previous episode, make a change in your life to where you don't have the same circumstances. You don't need it any longer, right? So, but it did enable me to connect with my feelings for a first time. So I looked into meditation. I started going down this road because I knew whatever I needed to heal inside. So after my burnout, first book I read was Neuroscience for Dummies, and simple meditative things though too. I mean, just like Headspace on Netflix, that showed up coincidentally right when the pandemic happened, and I had already resigned. I had already begun my course, sold the house, was on my journey and path to moving abroad for a year, with the intent of coming back and starting over at that point in time. And then the pandemic happened, and I was landlocked into the States, and that was awful. I
I
ended
bet.
up spending so much of my time, 9 months Airbnb in different uh, different states with usually some tourist, uh, slant to it. So the Tacomas here, there, Utah, and just all these places. So
Yeah.
re-seeing some things I'd already seen, seeing some landmarks I hadn't seen a month at a time. So by the time this happened, I was already what, later towards the end of the pandemic, people were identifying as nomad burnout. I had already experienced that. I was sick of picking up and traveling and starting over again every month at a time, just when I was in the States. But anyway, uh, it opened up. I left, did Aruba for a month with the potential to do 3, but ended up just doing a month. We were headed towards Southeast Asia with my partner. That was kind of the destination at that time, kind of like something you mentioned in the previous episode, the usual Thailand and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But that still had not opened up, as everyone knows. That's one of the last ones that opened up, even really after the U.S. had post-pandemic wise. But as far as quarantine requirements and such, so ended up doing Mexico because that was the next available. So did Puerto Morelos for 10 months. Um, I overstayed. I should have only done the 6 and left. I stayed long enough that I really got sick of it, that I'll never be going back now. Central America, for that matter. And again, I don't want to. I'm not. I'm just sharing. This is my opinion, my feelings, what I went through. So,
Yeah.
not saying anything's right, wrong, or what you should or shouldn't do. That's just what I walked away with. Southeast Asia was still not open at this point, and as far as what options were and visas that allowed, and I was sick again of I didn't want to go where I had to uproot in 3 months. So, of the countries in Europe, which I had already been in love with from previous vacationing and travel, that was really my destination, was Eastern Europe. That's really where I wanted to spend my time. But what was available at that time was Georgia allowed Americans a year at a time, and Albania allowed Americans a year at a time, no visa required. And the person that I was with, cold wasn't an option. I was more head set on Georgia myself. Again, liking Eastern Europe, and probably some of the food, and known for their wine and that sort of thing. But cold, and this was November, so a cold winter just wasn't an option for the partner that I was with. So I chose a warm Mediterranean winter. So Albania it was. And I'll say this, like every place that I've ever prepared for before visiting there, everything I ever read, watched, tried to bone up on before going there, none of that ever everything about Albania was bad that I'd read and seen, in terms of, they would say, like, so many videos, that they have a trash issue and this and that. And like always, none of that was ever true. I mean, most anything in Eastern Europe is going to prepare you for pickpockets and don't use the
Yeah.
public transit and this and that. And I have never experienced anything remotely like that. Now, I will say there's obviously always places, like there's this neighborhood you never go to, or, that sort of thing. But I've never had it happen to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never anything I've ever been warned about. I've never even experienced, come close to experiencing. So that's some of the fear stuff that we'll talk about in the future. But that's why we're trying to give context with this quick
Hmm.
autobiography. So ended up Albania. Didn't know what to expect. Wasn't my first choice. Uh, and I quickly, within a month to 3 months, really just I fell in love. So what Albania had for it here in the capital, which we can get that in other talks, but the capital is kind of it when it comes to Albania, other than the beach months. Um, I love it. It embraced so many things that I like the idea of Europe in one little thing. It's entirely pedestrian. I mean, you can walk the entire city in 30 minutes. It is
Yeah.
the safest place I've ever lived in my life. And that's weird to say.
It
We'll
is.
get to that in other episodes when you understand the infrastructure and how it operates and where some of the income is sourced. It's an interesting contrast but they don't as I said previously, nearly everywhere in the world they always have this. There's this one neighborhood you don't go, or this one street you don't walk on after a certain hour, or there's always something like that, right? There just doesn't seem to be one here in the city. That just doesn't exist. So it was the
Yeah.
safest place ever felt. um, English speaking enough, good enough, certainly in the service area, like the restaurants and, anyway, we'll get into Albania another time. So I decided, and the pandemic was still going on and things were changing. The world was shifting policies, countries that are generally, I mean, visas and residency and passport, things, they're like tax code. They change every year anyway. I was aware of this, so Albania offered Americans, again, unique to Americans at that time. I think this has already changed again since we've been here. A 5-year residency. So I got on that before, because there was rumor that it was going to change, and actually, when I was in process with
Hmm.
a law firm I chose here, sure enough, they were going to change it to match the same as what Europeans get, which is basically mirroring or mimicking the Schengen agreements. So anyway, it was going to be 3 years instead of 5. I was basically grandfathered in, but I kind of had to fight for that. I had the lawyers fight for that. And then just as I actually got the residency and I was going for my fingerprint scan for the residency for the digital ID card, they just retracted the whole thing. So I didn't even, it's funny, but that's, small governments can move fast, right? Small populaces can make big changes quick.
Yeah.
So I got that. I got the 5 years. And been, so just people, because they'll ask, so no, I haven't been working. That was part of it by the time I got here. And also I ended that relationship uh, shortly into being here, probably within, 6 months or less of being here. Um, you know, I think travel like that, nomading and travel like that can, as I used to explain it, when you had a comfortable life and both of you are working and you're in all the comforts of an American life, something that is a simple crack when you're 24 hours, everyone, what was it, a spike in divorces, right? During the
Hmm.
pandemic, when you're, just 24/7 like that on top of each other, what was once as a crack is now more like a canyon. So, uh, and this was a safe enough place. I felt like that was okay to do that as well. There's no way I would have done that in Mexico. I would not have left a female alone in that country, to be honest. So uh, this
That
felt
was
like,
it.
yeah. This was an okay
Yeah.
place to do. This was very safe. This was, so no issues with that. And so a big thing that happened here that's kept me here, to be honest. You know, Here I was. I think I just turned 50 at that time, and I fell in love for the first time in my life. Did I think I'd been in love before? Yes, previously, absolutely. Flavors of love, yes. In love, like this insane storybook writings and stories and everything. No, never had until then. And it just happened. Wasn't looking for it. Wasn't actually even dating. Neither was this person. We were probably in I was in my most awkward stage in my life. My life had always been very regulated, very habitual, very routine oriented, structured life. And here I was living, just in the moment, none of my routines, none of my habits, not going to the gym, not taking supplements, not watching anything that I did. I was just, a leaf in the wind. But that was kind of part of my original goal for that 1 year that I was going to stay away, which, as you hear, got delayed by circumstances. And then, I can't say kind of even began until a few months into being here in Albania. And so I gave myself permission. I gave myself a year. I thought, well, maybe I just need to be alone, for a year. Maybe I need to experience that and do that. And because you could say I was probably a serial monogamist before that. And that's when it happened, not looking for it, with all intentions of just being on my own for a year and just letting things sort and settle and continue to work on meditation and inner work. And
it's funny how that works, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, neither one of us looking for anything. And so, and to be from such different worlds.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a whole episode on relationships.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Yeah, let's see. So anyway, I think that's soup to nuts. I think that's the big picture of how I ended up here. But no, I wasn't working. I was living off of savings, and that was okay. I'd planned and prepared for all that. So it's been a non-issue. It hasn't been a sacrifice. But I've been a fortunate person as well. I've worked a lot. I've planned a lot. But also, I've also been fortunate a lot. So
yeah.
Over to you, Paul. Let's get your
man, we
autobiography.
Similar childhoods. Like I grew up just north of New Orleans, Louisiana, a little town called Covington. Very much the same as you. Like we grew up on a ranch, basically a working ranch. So we grew corn, we had chickens, pigs, cows, horses, we had everything. And we'd go out in the mornings and collect eggs and stuff like that. So I think we had similar childhoods. My dad was a physician, so he was very. I was very fortunate to grow up in a good bit of means, but he was also very, very grounded. Like he was very, very smart guy, but he taught us ground level things like how to survive off you grow your garden, how to make lard to store your stuff in, like how to he was very much almost like a prepper, but he wasn't, but he was like he believed in those skills. We went hunting all the time, we went fishing. We also were fortunate enough to where he had a lab in New Orleans, a pathology lab. He also had a lab in Central America that was a big tax write-off for the lab in the States. But part of the requirements for the lab in the Central America is we had to go there, every year to at least see it once, to make it legitimate. So every summer we'd go to Central America. And so I got to travel the first time I went, I think I was a baby. Literally just a baby in my mom's arms. And every year after that for like 25 years is what I can remember being every summer in Belize and Burgers Key and stuff. So I was very grateful for my childhood. I'm one of 7 kids. So we had a very dynamic family life. Like you had to deal with different personalities. I think it's helped me in dealing with so many different people in the world, because I was dealing with a lot of people just in my house, just different personalities, different levels of anger and, fighting and all this stuff. So, so I went through high school. I went to a good high school, went through a very good grade school that prepped me for everything in my life. The grade school was fantastic. And my dad was on the school board of that. So he forced the books on us that were like very advanced. So I went to grade school up to 9th grade. And then everything after that point was just repeat of what we did in 8th and 9th grade. So school came pretty easy to me. I went to LSU. I went to Southeastern Louisiana University. Had focuses on like English and chemistry. Initially, I wanted to be a doctor like my dad, so I took a lot of sciences. But after I got out, I was fixing computers and learning programming from early on, like from the TRS-80. Yeah, I was doing basic programming.
Trash 80s.
Yeah, and I loved mine. I loved mine so much, and they're the worst. But so I was fixing computers and doing that kind of stuff through college, and I worked at a place called Sound Warehouse, which is like a music store, but electronic store. Um, all this time too, I'm also playing music. I'm like, my family was very musically inclined. Like we used to sit around campfires and sing with guitars and stuff all the time. So I was always had a big, I loved music and stuff. I also just, like with that family dynamic, I'd gotten married very early actually. So I get through college. Um, I'm actually in my last year of college, and I was dating a girl, and she ended up pregnant, and so we got married, and I ended up having 4 kids. We got divorced, when I think I was 26 or 27, somewhere around there. So we got married for the wrong reasons, but I'm grateful for the product of that marriage,
Yeah.
because my kids are awesome. They're
Yeah.
great kids. They're all grown up now, but in my late 30s, so I stayed single for a long time. I dated people, a lot, but I didn't really like commit to anybody or anything. I didn't think I'd ever get married again. I ended up getting married again when I was 38, and then you know blended family. She had 3 kids of her own, so we had a huge huge stockpile of children. They're all growing up, and they were getting of age to kind of move out and kind of build their lives. We went through 8 years of marriage up until I was 46 or 47, and I ended up getting an opportunity. And this is, of course, all this time I'm having that level of depression, that weight of the world on my shoulders in the U.S. of living with the massive responsibilities. Everything I made was just flying out the door for everything. I was just getting that burnout phase, and I was working for a contract with a group that was local, but they had a support desk center here in Albania. And the owner of the company is like, "Hey, you want to, you're building a new software." I was programming a software suite for them. And he goes, "You should go to Albania and learn like there. We'll send you there for 6 months, and you can just figure out what you want to do, and and you'll be talking to the people using the software, so you'll get a really good handle on it." And I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea." And part of the original package, the plan, I mean, this is after working multiple jobs, like in software development. I worked for medical software companies and, just different, everything doing with IT, system administration, and software is what I kind of spent my whole career doing. And I was very successful at it. And it came natural and easy to me. So it wasn't like it was really work, but I was getting that burnout of the repetitiveness. And then I think the worst job I worked for a school board, and it was local government was the most horrendous. Like, I am not built for doing nothing and getting paid for it, and then protecting that job. Like, your whole existence is protectionism of that worthless job. Like, and I hated that. So quit them. But when I got to the group that had the call center here, my wife at the time knew it was my dream to leave, like to get out of the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And she was supportive at first. Like, she was like, "Oh, this would be great." We sold everything we owned. She was part of that. And when I got here, she lasted about a month, and then she missed her kids too much. And literally, it was kind of one of those situations where it was like, she's like, "I know this is your dream," and I'm like, "Yep." And she's like, "I have to go back home," and I'm like, we'll shake hands and part as friends. And that's where we're at to this day. We still chat every once in a blue moon, but there's no animosity. She went home, took care of all the paperwork. I was here, and after a few months here, I really liked it here. I mean, I was literally like, that weight off my shoulders. I felt like a new person. I could not express enough how much better my quality of life, and my mental well-being was. And I was like, "Man, there's no way I can go back. There's no way." And so I decided just to stay. Work through the contract with the group that had the call center here. I finished it, and I would pick up contracts along the way, working here. Sometimes I'd work 2-3 days a week. Sometimes I wouldn't work at all. Right now, I'm not doing anything, taking kind of a break. But it's that's part of the beauty of this place. Like people are so
Yes,
used
it
to
is.
living in the U.S. and having these, $600 light bills and paying $500 a month for car insurance, and then
Oh,
not on
that's a
top
whole
of it.
nother episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a whole episode. But
Yes.
here that just doesn't exist. Like it's so. I don't have a car here. I don't need a car here. I don't need. I have a nice 2-bedroom apartment, and my apartment with the electric bill and phone bill and everything is less.
Everything.
Yeah, it's less than it's like $500 a month, and I'm like going, my goodness. And people in the U.S. haven't seen those prices since maybe the 70s. Like, so it's
Yeah.
a country in ascension. It's in, it's kind of growing into its own. The prices increases a little bit over the years, but it's still way, 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 way cheaper. So you can have much less responsibility at a job and still have a high quality of life in a place like this.
Yeah, 100
Um,
gigabit internet connection is less. Well, so it's like $100 for a year. That's not
yeah,
even someone's
for
monthly bill,
a
right?
year. Yeah, I have 300 megabit service and I pay $13 a month, which is insane. Like in the US,
Everything's like that,
it'd be
just as a
a
scale
hundred
for
bucks.
everything. We'll get to this in another episode, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
we'll have a whole episode on
if
literally the
you've already
cost
got your
of
money
living.
situation worked out, it's incredibly inexpensive to live in Eastern Europe and the Balkans. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely so that even sold me more. So the mental clarity that I had is like, okay, this is the change that's really helped my mental well-being. The cost of living, the walkability of the city. You brought that up. I really love that.
Love that.
Like like you
Love
have
that.
everything you need within this is a walking distance, and it's a lot of fun. It's a big city. It's a big little city. Um,
There
it's
you
like
go. Big little
a
city. Yeah.
yeah. It's like a mini because there's a lot
It's
of
a
people.
big
There's like
town.
oh, I want to say like on the internet it tells you like there's like 375,000 people that live in Toronto, but the reality is it's more like a million, maybe a million and a half,
Mhm.
because it's
Mhm.
because everybody doesn't register. The registering is different. They wherever you're born, that's where you're registered and that's where you live. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you move cities. Like it's so the population censuses are all incorrect.
This
But
is the only destination in the country, so everyone,
it,
no matter
it
where you come from, comes here. Yeah.
they all come here. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. Like Toronto is Albania, in my opinion. I mean, it's the only city with stoplights. Put it that way. No other city in Albania has even traffic lights.
Ah, so true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like movie theaters, they're only here. Chinese food only here, but nowhere else in the country. So it's amazing.
Chinese food.
Yeah.
Another
Mhm.
episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Air quotes for everything. So so it's definitely like it's a good quality of life, and you're right about the expat meets, man. It's all the same questions. Where are you from? What are you doing here? How'd you get here? So that's kind of why we decided to
Yeah.
do this episode in general, just to give her a little bit of a backstory. But I do know since you know since you and I just kind of started talking and hanging out mostly, um, it's been really nice to be able to relate, like speak about that relief of
Mhm.
moving out of that matrix and having somebody else understand it. Um, I think Albania is an underrated gem of a country. It's got its problems for sure, but it is like you're saying earlier, the safest place I've ever been. Like I could bring a laptop and a phone, walk
Oh,
away down the street and come back and it'll still be there. And
I
the
have left my glasses and their prescription, my phone, multiple times at multiple locations, sometimes on the table that's on the street.
yeah,
They're always there. They're always there waiting for there's never yeah,
which
and that
wouldn't
is so
happen.
not Mexico.
Yeah, it's not even America. I think in America that would happen too.
Oh,
Like
yeah. It's
you know,
crazy how much we, cannibalize on each other in
oh,
such a
it's
established
unreal.
country. It's sad, but yeah.
Yeah, but it was it's and the thing is too when first moved here, my mom was so terrified. Oh my God, you're gonna get
Yes.
kidnapped and this
Right.
and it's literally it's. I mean, statistically, it's the safest place in all of Europe. Like, there's the least petty crime, least theft, of any country in all of Europe,
Mhm.
which I didn't realize, but until doing a little research for this episode.
Yeah,
But
like, I
it's
love Hungary, but even
yeah,
there, it's
oh
known
yeah,
Non-violent, mind you, but B&Es are high,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
non-violent. You'll never be home. There'll never be an altercation. No one's going to get stabbed, but a high rate of breaking and entering.
Right,
And
100%.
you have nothing here.
And the religious tolerance. Some people, I think, some people were concerned that Albania is primarily it's 60% Muslim
On
uh,
paper.
on paper, but nobody cares, and nobody really. I don't see a lot of religious people here at all. Like it's kind of
Unless
like
you go to a mosque, you're not even going to see a burqa, and even then, you don't really see. Those are sparse. Like
very
I could
sparse.
probably count on two hands how many I see a year.
Yeah, yeah. Even the prime minister's Catholic. I didn't realize that either. So go figure. So the religious tensions it just doesn't exist here. Like in what people would consider Muslim countries. So it's just not in
Yeah,
Albania.
on paper, yeah, and that's product. That's a lot. I think we'll share and bring to the surface when we get on Albania specific subjects later. Is
Yeah,
what you read is not reality. Same as America, same as everywhere. What you read is just not. It's just
right.
not the case, and it's a weird. We'll get into that, but there is a weird contrast of facts of like
Mhm.
their financial infrastructure, and they're the source for a couple of things that just absolutely contrast the fact that it's the safest place I've ever lived.
Right.
It's weird, but true.
It is. It's very strange. Well, we'll do a whole episode on that for sure. But much like you too, like when I got here after my ex-wife left, um, couple months later, I ended up meeting somebody that I genuinely cared about very deeply. Like Albanians are beautiful, by the way. I should put that out there. If I mean, the women in this country, and I know everybody's got their own story about as far as different countries with women, but
Don't cite anybody. Easy.
I have never seen the highest concentration of
Uh,
beautiful, like they take good care of themselves, women as I have in Albania. I've never seen it anywhere in the world. Not like here. I mean, there's just so many. It's not even funny. So, but yeah, fell in love with a beautiful little Albanian girl, and she is just adorable and fun. And it's been 5 years of that, roughly. Yeah, about 5 years because I've been here like 5.33, 5 years and like 4 months, something like that. So after a month after got here, my ex left, and then about maybe 2 months later, I started dating. Um, it just eased right into it. So it was really good, really good. And they're very traditional here, like the women. So it's a hard. It's not like Thailand or something where everybody's just pulling on you and stuff.
yeah,
They have a
most of Europe
they have a
is. If it's not
wall.
a first world, it's traditional, which is part of what I like. Again, in the previous episode when I was talking about identity, it's
Yeah, yeah,
things are
that
very
tradition.
simple and straightforward. Yeah.
100%, 100%. And it's not like like you see that movie Euro Trip where people think, oh, I'm gonna go crazy Euro sex and all this stuff. Like it's not really like that here.
Oh.
As much as people think that Europe's like that, it's really not. Like it's different. I
Yeah,
mean,
don't get your
it's
hopes up. If that's what
possible.
you're looking for, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you got to
yeah,
look for that and pay for it, and that would be Amsterdam, I think, and that might be about it.
exactly,
Right?
exactly. Which is like the
It's their
Vegas
Vegas.
of Europe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bingo. Ah, I got you.
shakes. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely it's a beautiful thing, man. So that's pretty much most of my story. I mean, there's a lot more details to it, but I don't want to bore you
Yeah.
guys with everything.
Same
So
here. Yeah, we just want to give some because you'll hear things, and rather than having to rehash where we're from and why that's relative, and well, who is this guy, so that it matters when he says something. Just you have the backstory now, at least
yeah.
largely.
Yeah, the truth is Wes and I, we're nobodies. We're just people that have failed into success and somehow made ourselves happier because of it. So we made plenty of mistakes and we've made plenty of blunders, but yet somehow our mental well-being and everything is coming together in droves. Like lately, just through communication, through sharing our experiences, and I think that's
A
kind
lot
of
of
why we
reading.
want to do this channel. Yeah, a lot of reading, a lot of just
I'm going to make a lot of
self-introspection.
references to a lot of good material that I hope helps other people.
Yeah, and we'll definitely share that with you guys. But that's pretty much why we're here. So, yeah, that's it's a kind of a continuation of the first episode, a little bit, but it's just a little bit more detail and a little more context, and that way we can talk in the future when we talk
Just
about
wanted to get
things.
the past out of the way, yeah, so we can move
Yeah,
forward.
you'll definitely understand everything else. So, yeah, we're running to about maximum time we want to go. So, anything else you want to add before we sign off today, man?
No, just thanks for running the show again.
Oh man, thank you guys for joining us, and we hope you enjoy this journey. Until next time, we'll see you again very soon.